In this tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at Adobe Bridge and the user interface. It's important to know what I'm talking about when I say things like go to the File menu. So we'll start with that. With Bridge running, start by going to the upper left of your screen. Across the top, we have File, Edit, View, Stacks, Label, Tools, etc. This area is called the File menu. The tools that we'll be using are usually found up here. In addition, if they have a keyboard shortcut, for example, File Info, you will see that keyboard shortcut listed on the right side of that File menu option. Next, we'll look at the two primary workspaces we'll be using in Adobe Bridge for this class. They're located in the center top of the application window. The first one is Essentials, and that is the one where we can see our images as thumbnails. And the next one is Film Strip, and that allows us to view small thumbnails of our images and have a larger preview so that we can go through our images and select which ones we want to work on in Photoshop and ultimately submit for the class. Next, we need to know about the path bar. That's in the upper left of your window, and that basically shows the file path on your computer to the folder that you're viewing. So right now I'm viewing a folder called Stars that is on my desktop, which is in my home folder, which is in my users folder, my hard drive, and my computer. You can always use the path bar to quickly find where the folder you're working on is located on your computer. It's important to note that if you're using a PC, on the very left of the path bar, it will show you the location of the folder you're viewing. Then it will go to the actual computer, the hard drive, the user folder, the desktop, and Stars. It'll look slightly different, but it's essentially the same thing. We're going to look at the panels on the left side of the window when we're in Essentials view. On the top panel on the left, we have our favorites. Now, those by default have a few places. On a Mac, it's Home, Desktop, Documents, and Pictures. It'll be slightly different on a PC. But if I'm always dragging my folders from the Google Drive onto my desktop to work with them, whether I'm on a Mac or a PC, I can click on the desktop, scroll through the folders, find the folder Stars, and quickly access that folder. You can also use a Finder window on a Mac or File Explorer on a PC to create shortcuts to add specific folders to that favorites bar. I'm on my Mac and I want to add my current folder of images for the month of February to the favorites bar. So I'm just going to click and drag that over, and now when I click on that, I have all of the assignments that I've shot for this month, so I can quickly access the photos from, let's say, the North Coast Journal that I took of the director of the Needle Exchange in Eureka. Next, we're going to look at the filter panel on the lower left side of the application window. In this folder of images, I currently have 4 images with no rating, 3 images with 1 star, and 1 image with 5 stars. In the editing process, if I want to ignore all of the photos that don't have a rating, I can click on the 2 that do, and that will remove from view the images that I have not added any stars to. This is very handy for when we're adding captions or just opening our stuff into Photoshop to process it, so that we are only working on the images that we actually want to submit for an assignment. Now we'll take a look at the metadata panel on the right-hand side of the application window. That has a bunch of information about our images. I'm just going to select one image so I can see some of the metadata. Metadata is a bunch of information that is stored within the image file itself. Some key things to point out are that it will display your camera's settings as you shot them. So for example, this image of the plane was shot at f6.0. That's the f-stop. That's how much light is coming in through the lens. It was 1/2000th of a second. That's the shutter speed. And the ISO was 1250. If you look in the next box, it gives me the actual pixel dimensions. So this image has been cropped. It's saved as a JPEG at 10 inches long. It is 2200 pixels wide by 1464 pixels tall. It is 682 kilobytes when it is closed and compressed as a JPEG. It is at 200 pixels per square inch, and it is in RGB mode. Now, if you know anything about printing presses, like for newspapers, they use a 4-color mode called CMYK. Monitors and digital devices use RGB, which stands for red, green, and blue. All of the colors you see on a monitor or that are taken with a digital camera are created by collecting red, green, and blue light. I want to show you some of the information that's stored in the metadata that's below those basic settings. If you look at the camera data, the EXIF data, this has a much more detailed explanation of what was going on. For example, it also shows me the exposure mode was in manual, so I was controlling all 3 of the settings. It has the focal length, which was 420 millimeters. It says the kind of lens it was. Once we start learning how to put captions into our photos, we can also look at the IPTC core data, especially this field called description. And so this box is kind of hard to read, but what I have stored within this photo is the caption that is associated with that photo. And of course, there's other stuff we can put keywords in. I'm the description writer. This was taken at Lakeport is the city, California is the state. This was for Zuma Press, and this was copyrighted in 2018. And the last thing I want to remind you of is if you need to make your thumbnails smaller or larger, at the bottom of the screen there is a slider. So I can increase the size of my thumbnails, and I can decrease the size of my thumbnails. That's handy if you want to shrink them all the way down and make sure, let's say you've selected all of them and you're going to rename them. You may want to shrink this all the way down so you can see all of the images and make sure that they've all been selected. That slider also works in the film strip mode. Now, I like to make my film strip images as small as possible because when I click on an image, I want to see the biggest preview I can so I can really check the image to make sure it's one I want to use. I can also make this panel smaller, and this will only affect the film strip mode. I can also hover between these two fields and make the thumbnails even smaller so that I have this large preview image to work with. In the industry, we call that area where we have an image displayed on our screen real estate, and the more real estate, the better, especially if I'm looking for minor flaws in an image. You should now have a pretty decent understanding of the way in which you can interact with Bridge and view and edit your images for this class.